Hello, 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 you guys. It is Ebony, it is I, and today, you know how I want to talk about motherfucking Mark Lee, you guys. So when I was talking about Mana, maybe like a month or two ago, probably like 2 months ago at this point, I mentioned I was just doing some K-pop hot topics because I had a lot on my mind. Like I had just had a lot of really weird experiences at the time, and around that time, it was that Mark thing happened like the end of June. The scandal had come out, and let me tell you guys, let me talk about my extensive background with K-pop before I get into this. I'm just gonna yap a little bit. I always leave timestamps, so if you don't want to hear this shit, you will be allowed to skip ahead, but this is context for those who want it. There's just something in my soul that tells me I'm gonna be very happy. That is this a testimony? I don't know. This is a video about Mark, so fuck it, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, you guys, from like 2021 to really like 2025, I was an obsessive and citizen, and I still love them. I still stand, but like I feel like I've really grown past the point. I've never been someone to materially invest in K-pop groups, but yeah, I became an N citizen back in 2021. It was right after Sticker. So Sticker technically wasn't the song that turned me on to being an N citizen, but obviously a lot of people thought the song was dog shit. So obviously there was a lot of conversation about them. And to go back to like my original K-pop lore, the very first time I really became a K-pop stan, it was actually right before my 12th birthday. Why does everything happen before my birthday? That's weird. And I had seen like K-pop songs, but I like, for example, like I definitely, the first K-pop video I think I ever saw was like Bubble Pop by Hyuna, and like consciously understood that it was like a whole different like industry, it was a whole different country, had certain things going on. But like as an American child, you definitely been exposed to K-pop here or there, especially if you watch Asian media. Like, the Wonder Girls were on Nickelodeon at one point in time. I was a big Inuyasha fan, so like every Heart by Boa was literally one of the soundtracks to my childhood. But yeah, because NCT is so popular, like so talked about at this point, there's a lot of interviews of Doyoung going around. He's like explaining the concept, and he's like, "Is it confusing to you? Yeah, it's confusing to me, right?" But because I had been an OG Super Junior stan at the time, and I was obsessed with Super Junior, like the very first time that I saw it was like Mr. Simple that had just come out around that time, and I'm telling you, the very first night that I sat there and I watched that music video, I watched it behind the scenes, and from there I just fell into a rabbit hole of content and information, because if you know K-pop, they do such a good job of giving you so much to work with in terms of content and personality. That's something that they have the West beat at. Like they are content fiends, and they've been like that for before this was really like a social media era. They were on top of the content and the variety shows. Baby girl, I fell into a rabbit hole. I stayed up all night that night. All night, and I was in love with it. So I knew for a fact, if you didn't know this, that NCT's concept actually began with Super Junior. I think it's based on a lot of like the graduation system type groups that you see in like Japan, and that's why like Dream also attempted this as well, but it didn't work, as we know now. But yeah, I was just really gravitated by the fact that they had a lot of relics from what was a very nostalgic point in my life. um like I just like, for some reason, I don't know, I like, it's not that I love Super Junior based on the concept, but because I love them so much and I knew so much of their lore. I think that there's a part of my soul in a very weird way that just felt connected to them, because I was just like I said, it takes me back to a very, very specific place. And it's like, it's almost like seeing your dreams kind of like lived out, even though NCT really didn't do super well with the graduation concept either. They actually, like I said, they kind of failed at it too, because fans got too attached. But yeah, but one thing about NCT in comparison to other groups at the time, I definitely like, when I became a Super Junior stan, I was a K-pop stan in general. Like I just got obsessed with everyone, and I did so very consistently until about 2014. I always say like I called that time of my life going outside and talking to men and boys in real life. Like I actually was having real relationships, talking to real Black people in real life. So like honestly, my real formative years of like puberty had nothing to do with K-pop for me. It was really in my early adulthood where I returned. Obviously it was like the pandemic, so it was, just a very perfect time to get right back into it. Like I said, it reminded me a lot of my childhood. And one defining thing about NCT that I think they have on a lot of groups is they're funny. They're really funny, and especially their content at the time was super funny. It was super interesting, and it's 20 billion of them, so there's a lot of content to go around. Like,
조용히 딴다
숨어
그냥.
있을게 빨리 해.
엄마, 아빠, 그동안 못해줘서 미안해요.
like there is so many great moments from that time period where like, you guys, like, let me tell you something. Being an N citizen in like the early 2020s was great because you missed all the controversies of them in the late like 2010s, right? Because I didn't like, what's unreal is I actually heard of Yuta and Taeyong as the SM rookies, but I never knew that they debuted or whatever. So like everything that had happened up until 2021, I had no idea. So it's like I have a bunch of content to feed off of. I have like 5 years worth of content to feed myself with. There's also new stuff coming out at this point in time. That's around like 2020 to 2022. In my opinion, is probably the peak of their fame. And yeah, it was a very beautiful time to be an edit citizen. Like I said, I'm removed from a lot of the drama, but there's enough lore for me to be able to be well fed, and they're still in their prime kind of, so there is still a lot more to go. Like it was definitely a sweet spot to kind of join in what was going on. And I'm not gonna lie, I really did gravitate to Mark. The thing about it is, like, I always thought it was like an astrology kind of thing because me and Mark is like less than 2 weeks older than me, right? Like, we're born around the same time, so we have a lot of the same traits. Honestly, not all of my personality, obviously, but I do see parts of my like social awkwardness in him. I do think Mark is just stupid sometimes, though, but that is in and of itself. But yeah, the thing about it is basically around 2023, baggy jeans, let me tell you something, baggy jeans pissed me the fuck off real good. And I was like, because for example, if you know the NCT lore, there are a lot of times where people were like, Mark has a black scent, he's a black scent. There's a video 10 clocking him.
말하지 않아도 you know she's feel like foreign.
요즘 유행하는 말투야. 요즘 유행하는 말투야.
아니 막 요즘 원래 이렇게 말해 요즘.
아 진짜?
근데 이게
오케이.
맞나 봐.
저 요즘 그 막 말투는 배우고 싶어서 좀 도와주면 안 돼요?
그
I don't lie.
그 TV 보면 돼. TV 보면.
어떻게? 저는 요즘 그냥 뭔가
아니요 나 그렇게 얘기하지.
And I'm like, you guys, I didn't see it. Not because it didn't exist, but because, like I said, it had never been my first-hand experience with Mark. I'm like, y'all are talking about some black scent. I've never, because mind you, I'm coming in 2021. I've never seen Mark do any of that shit that people are talking about. So I'm like, you guys, I don't really know what you're talking about. But baggy jeans was the first gunshot to me, right? Because I'm like, did he have a do-rag? Someone had something on where I was like, okay. I'm like, okay, like whatever the fuck that means. But basically the breaking point for me was 2025, the end of like September or so, when that McDonald's ad came out. I was like, okay. And then he's on the interview with Eric Nam and they're talking how they're talking, and it's like, okay. And I promise, I'm a big believer in those who don't hear must feel. So when I saw that shit, I was like, you're weirding me out. You're creeping me out. I don't like this. It's not that I was so financially invested in this regardless, but like, I'm going to divest before this escalates to different things, because it didn't take for anti-blackness a personal, like I said, I did not know intimately about any of the anti-blackness that had gone on before I was there. But when I saw that, to me was like a warning. Like, that was the real red flag where I was like, you probably have strong opinions and I don't want to be part of it. When it comes to my turn, when it comes to me being offended by whatever you have to say, I'm done. I promise you 2025, I was like, I am bowing out here gracefully. I'm leaving. So fast forward to this beautiful, insane, serene day for me in June 2026, where Mark is outside very comfortably, very casually, with a Confederate flag shirt on. Right? We're going to talk some more about what that incident was like, obviously where he's at, but it's just like, he left. And I tweeted about this the other day. I said, you guys, Mark has always been stupid. Mark has always been visibly stupid, but because he was under such a strict entity like SM, it's easy for it to become endearing because he didn't actually have to think for himself. Even though we know Mark, like, when he wants to contribute and when he wants to use brain power in terms of like his talent, because Mark is talented. Let me say this too. I never gagged at Mark being a rapper. I'm not gagging at no Korean who is a rapper. I don't give a fuck. Okay. Mark is a talented dancer. He has amazing stage presence. Like, Mark has aura. And honestly, if you are a Mark F or whatever, you know for a fact, if they're ever talking about someone don't got lines on an NCT song, it was never Mark. It was never Mark. It was never Mark. Trust me when I say I was well fed while I was there. And when it got weird, I got the fuck up out of there. But yeah, like his personality was able to come off charming, I believe, because so much was controlled around him that he really was not allowed to say out loud and think out loud the way that he really felt about certain things. And so, like, you just got outside. It's been less than 3 months since you got free, and the world fucking blew up around you. Literally, so much hype and anticipation around whatever that you would have did because everyone is watching. And you go and you post yourself in a Confederate flag. You do something so obviously racist. And mind you, Mark, even though he's Canadian, he's actually lived in America. He's lived in America. So, like, you know for a fact, like, like you guys. But like I said, that day I had a really good day because, like I said, when I saw that McDonald's ad in September, I said, "You're weird," and I'm done. That was enough for me. I was not gonna wait until he said "fuck black people," until he explicitly said "fuck black people" for me to feel like I need to go. And that's why that day I woke up and I said, I don't have no qualms today because guess what? When that nigga was being weird back in September, I said that was enough for me, and it really was, and that was it. I don't really strongly know how I feel about NCT at this point in time. Like I said, my heart really goes out to them. There is a part of me that will always have love for them and that part of my life, but I'm just like, I just don't know how invested I can be. My favorite color is green, is organically green, and I think that was something like there are a lot of ways in which I feel like I can revere myself, but also kind of revere the fact that I love them so much without it necessarily having to be about them. Because bitch, I'm probably never gonna buy a piece of merch, but like I have various green things that remind me a lot of them that I would wear if I could. I don't know. I don't think that I'm there. You're right. I don't really think that I'm there. Maybe my mind will change. I don't know, but like as of right now, as an adult, I'm like I can't stand and be invested the way I was, as a child at least. But yeah, it's safe to say that Mark ruined a lot of the good feelings that a lot of people had about him. And like I said, Mark has been stupid several times, but he really did come off very endearing and charming and kind of innocent to people. So to see him do something that was so flagrantly hateful was confusing to a lot of people. And on top of that, he still went about it in his very kind of like roundabout soft way, in terms of addressing it, which obviously pissed people off rightfully, because like this is definitely not the time to be doing ooh ooh and like you're not being direct, and like it was just a horrible way to address it. And I think that is forever going to leave a negative taste in people's mouths. But I really just want to see what Mark is going through, because people now think that he's in a cult, and like I said, I don't think Mark is just so all the way up there upstairs. So do I think that he is in a cult? I'm not saying that I do think that he is, but do I think that he's susceptible? Yes. But I'll say this as well, I think that anybody who is going through a vulnerable time in their life, especially a point in time where they might be very unconfident, it's very easy to get roped into anything. Everyone thinks that they're smarter or better than a cult until they're having a fucked up day and someone with a savior complex comes by them. Right. So we're just going to see what's going on with him. Maybe what career things he has ahead of him. This is really just a personal video, but we're going to see what happens. I definitely think Mark left on his own terms, if you were to ask me. I think he was very, very happy to. I think that it's like the last day of school for him. I think he was very happy to get away from SM, from that building, from having to check in with them, for feeling like they control his life. Especially if behind the scenes they were telling him that he cannot share certain sentiments, especially being a Western idol. I'm not going to say that they're this racially sensitive to things, but I do think that they understood that he might have been liked, and so there are certain things that they would not allow him to do, maybe in comparison to other people. The thing about it is, I don't think Mark ever had a strong idea of what he was going to do afterwards. I think he was in this mindset of I'm just going to figure it out along the way, which isn't inherently horrible, but he should have had a little bit more plan in terms of what he wanted to do. I think his biggest issue was the fact that he left one thing and he didn't have a strong idea of what he was going to go. And like I said, when you're in those in-between spaces, it's easy for people who have a stronger sense of self to come in and tell you who and what you're going to be because you feel like they have the answers. I do think that he felt there was a lot of promise in making this decision to leave, and so he felt like the world was in his palm, so there was no quote unquote wrong answer. Um, and that clearly is not the truth. He might feel like he's starting to feel his first kind of feelings of karma or even resentment as a result of certain things failing. I also want to say that he could beef really badly with his manager, but I wonder if he might be under very strict contact terms, like allegedly, hypothetically. I just feel like if he had a hard time getting from SM, this manager might really give him hell on earth before he's able to get out of this contract, and it obviously is going to become very, very personal on his way out. But yeah, he was very happy. He thought he saw it. His intuition is strong, even if it might lead him in the wrong direction. He might feel like he kind of led himself off of a cliff, not knowing that, thinking that it's almost like he wanted to leave that evil, not knowing that he was going to the greater evil because he thought it was a little bit more intimate. In a lot of ways, I do think 127 feels like they are better off without him. Not because Mark is untalented. I just think that they have this mindset. Like, for example, in the teasers for their new track that's going to drop on the 24th, I think, there was some mention of like choose those who decided to stay, right? Obviously, because they have very notoriously lost a couple of members over the past couple of years because of bad personal decisions. yeah, I feel like his mindset was kind of causing dissent in the group. I honestly wonder if they might have had a bunch of arguments beforehand where there was just a lot of drama around him being kind of radical or having strong opinions, hypothetically, allegedly. And so I don't think that they hate him, but I do think that they were tired of working with him in a lot of ways. I think that he might have been stopping money. Like, for example, we might have saw what he did with the shirt, but he might have been saying things behind the scenes where it's like, if you said this would cause so much issue for us in the public eye. And for example, it probably started with the McDonald's ad where it's like a lot of what you're doing is making us look very, very bad, right? Because like there was somebody else, I don't know if it was Taeyong or who had a McDonald's ad where they kind of publicly denounced it. Like they weren't just like gung ho about it. So I do think that they were worried about his opinions or the things that he would say, fucking up things. And so in that way, they were definitely happy to kind of separate themselves from him. They definitely felt like he was on his way, like like it was inevitable this happening. So I'm telling you, I don't think that this is the first time that he would have shared some bigoted ideas or said or did things that he thought was radical and then was planning to hide behind, oh, I don't know, or just not, being vague and addressing it and things like that. Like people around him definitely knew that he was definitely a little cuckoo. Like I don't know if they full on thought he was crazy, but they might have heard some of the things that he would say or wanted to do and they were like, not here though. Like yeah, I think in a lot of ways they would have hoped that he would have remained kind of behind the public eye or just not, like I think they were afraid of him being public with certain things. I think that they were definitely afraid of him being public with certain things. They were hoping that he was just going to take some more time to learn himself, to figure things out before he would have just came out and make bold statements. I promise you, it might be in the Confederate shirt or some forms of anti-blackness or just racism, but he's definitely said or done things that have made other people around him concerned about his image, about how he would impact their image as well because he had such radical beliefs. This could even be about religion, for example. They thought that he was probably going to throw away, hypothetically, allegedly, they thought that he might throw away his star power with some of these things that he was saying or doing. There is a love for him, but like it was really hard to keep him around at some point. Like he didn't want to be there and he was doing things to make sure that he would be separate from them. And so I do think that they kind of feel indifferent about this because they didn't want him to be here and he didn't want to be here either. Like it was good while it lasted, but it had to end. It had to end. The thing about it is, I actually think that Mark is definitely working on an album. I would not be surprised if within the next 6 months this is something that is complete or he's ready to put out. And when I say within the next 6 months, this could easily be in the next 3 months. I just feel like probably by January or February next year, he will drop something. I honestly feel like it'll probably be before, like October, like mid to late October. I'll just say anywhere from the mid October to mid November could definitely be significant in terms of maybe dropping singles or like announcing this. And I'm not gonna lie, I think it'd actually be better than his first album. This might be something that invokes God or religion quite a bit, or just talks about his beliefs, maybe some of the issues that he's had with his beliefs, like obviously this controversy behind the shirt or his Christianity and things like that. Definitely strong like Sagittarian themes, so this could be even about travel and things like that. This may mention race. I don't even know if this is like experiences with being Asian. Like I said, it's just Sagittarian, like Jupiterian things, so themes. So like religion, belief, travel, race, ideology, all that. The thing about it is, I don't think that Mark is really gonna feel like he fucked this up for real until he sees that he's not doing well. I don't know if he expects to do really well in Korea. I don't think this is going to do very well at all. This is definitely going to be numbers that are very, very disappointing to him. This could be somewhere within the 5 figures. I don't know if Mark has a woman around him who he goes for guidance. I don't care if this is like an actual mentor or maybe he has someone who does some sort of divination for him who might have promised him that he will be highly successful. This bitch doesn't know what she's talking about. Like, I think so. He has people around him who are yes men and they're really hyping him up as if he's doing an amazing thing. And they're telling him that he's going to be so successful and he's going to make so much money. This kind of gives me MLM a little bit. So there might even be a thing of like, oh, well, it'll come back in, like there might be a guarantee in some way. It might just be this is a very delusional sentiment, or they're promising like if we do this for you it's gonna work, and then it doesn't. He's going to be very shocked by this failure. He was not expecting it. I think he definitely very much so understands, especially if this is, there's some people who are like, you can't cancel me, and then they do some shit and it's like, I mean, you're not canceled but you flopped on your face. He's not going to really understand the gravity of what he did until he puts himself out there and it underperforms. And it's really interesting because I'm thinking about Lisa from Blackpink, who, like, out of all the Blackpink members, she had the most like anticipated release or whatever, and Lisa ended up doing basically the worst, right? So this is like, if Lisa, who at the end of the day, let's be honest, is huge and is bigger than NCT and is bigger than anybody as a solo artist from there, and Lisa can come to America with all that anticipation and hype, she can speak the language and all that, and Lisa flops on their face, what do you think is going to happen to you? And mind you, Lisa flop pre-nigga gate, so what do you think they're going to do to you when you drop? What do you think is going to happen? Like, yeah, I think at that point he might be trying to do like PR, like damage control, and say I didn't mean it and things like that. But it's too late. It's clear that I think at that point as well that you did it because you're flopping, not necessarily because you give a fuck, and that's fine. But like if you didn't give a fuck and you stood on that, so stand on that when you fail, right? Yeah, I do think it'll be very rap and very dance centric. As I do think this will definitely have good quality. So there might be why certain people are speaking life into him, but I just do not think that many people will. The word invoice is coming through. Not a lot of people will invest in this. He will probably owe more money on this project than making like breaking even the way that he thought. And that's why MLM is coming through. Like I just wonder if they fronted him some money that he really cannot make back. Unfortunately, like especially if the fronting came from a very strange or underhanded way, like I said, with an MLM, where it's like you kind of have to rob Peter to pay Paul. I don't know if someone like this is like scam money or like something about this money like that was used to fund it wasn't right, and so the fact that he can't make it back to like clean it is very much so an issue. Yeah, but he definitely has a project that he's going to move forward with. To me, this is definitely, I say an album because I do think this is probably going to be 7 songs and upward. So in terms of being in a cult, I do not think Mark is in a cult. I don't think that where he's at is actually a cult. I don't think he's in a cult, but I do think that he trusts this manager to a degree that is stupid, and that's why it can seem a little bit cult-like. But I do not actually believe that he is in a cult, and he needs to be saved, or there's something strange going on there. I think this man spoke certain things into him, and Mark heard what he liked. Like I think that, like I said, I think that his issue is he likes how things sound, but he doesn't understand the impacts of those things will impact success, right? Like you can put in an album all that you want. If you have a huge black fan base and then you call everybody a monkey, you're my love. Like like I said, I feel like another reason why he seems a little bit cultish and a little bit like insulated from feeling like he has to take accountability is because he has people around him who are yes men. I think that's why he comes out the way that he does. They are yes men. So for example, he's living in the manager's house. He probably shouldn't be doing that, but people around him like it's normal. You know, you don't need to worry about those people because you're going to be successful regardless. The lady said it. The divination lady said it, and it's like she don't know what she's talking. She's like she's part of she's part of this group too. Why would she tell you otherwise? They have no incentive to tell him the truth. That's the issue. No one around him has no incentive to tell him the truth. If they told him the truth, he would have got on that Instagram and been groveling, right? Not because I even needed an apology from Mark. It's really when it comes time when you want people's money, those same people who you said fuck all y'all, that shirt wasn't that deep. Those are the same people you're gonna need some money from. Watch. I do feel like also I want to say this. He's not in a cult. I do think that these people are also like very overly religious. These are definitely the kind of people who feel like faith will happen without works. It does not work like that. I was telling somebody yesterday. The word is living. The word is living. The word is not just something that exists in the Bible. Just because you pray does not mean you will get something. You have to move. They believe that believing is enough when all the logistics of it is fucked up. It does not work like that. I'm telling you, he's not going to understand until this comes out and he sees himself failing. If you don't fuck off, he really does have a God complex, or people around him will make him feel like he's going to be okay. He really thinks he's above it, right? I'm getting Tyler and how like Tyler is like chronically on the wrong side of history of things and really just thinks that like being skinny is going to be enough to sell, and it's not. It's not. He doesn't understand how much he's fucked up. He thinks that he's able to come back from it. The thing about it is, even if Mark has been racially insensitive, it's actually never been to that level. And you also do not have a huge conglomerate protecting you at this point. It's literally just you and your manager in New Jersey making this shit happen. You're not smart. I don't think his manager is trustworthy. I do think that he knows. The manager seems like, I don't know if the manager, I think he's married, right? He definitely there's a woman around who's protecting him and who's inflating him. Even if the woman doubts him, because she might need some participation or like I said, funds from Mark. Like I said, there's something weird about the money here that's intriguing me. Like I would really love to know how certain things are being funded through this manager. She's speaking life into this man that she doesn't even believe in because she needs Mark to believe in something so they can cash out on it. It reminds me of Euphoria, where she's like, "We invested our kids' college funds in the field," and Cassie is like, "Bitch, it's not my fault." Like it's one of those things where it's like she's like Nate, who needs you to believe in certain things that you know for a fact cannot come to pass. But Mark takes these things literally just because his woman speaks with conviction. But I think he already knows that this manager is not trustworthy. I wouldn't be surprised if there are things behind the scenes where he's like, the red flags are going off, but like you're all I have at this point. Like I said, I think that he's already seen through him. I do think it's just a matter of like acting on it. That is being held off on. But like I said, he probably doesn't know where else to go. Yeah, like I think that's going to be a real tower, because at that point in time you've kind of alienated anybody who you would have if you wanted to be independent, right? You might not have a strong sense of how to make things work independently, and then you've alienated your fan base as well. So like, who do you have no friends in your corner. People who you used to work with think you're crazy. Your fan base thinks you're an asshole, and all these people who lied to you aren't going to support. Like, they're all that you have. What are you really going to do? He might feel like he like I said, he's not going to get it until certain things come to pass, but he does feel like he wasted a golden opportunity in the fans, in the company that he had, in the past coworkers that he had as well. Because like I said, I don't feel like he left NCT on a super amazing note with them. Like I honestly do not feel like I feel like it's cordial. Like if they're around each other, it's going to be an acknowledgement. But I don't think it's going to be like, oh my god, Mark. Like I really do feel like he kind of creeped them out or freaked them the fuck out before he left, right? And so he kind of has to stand on that. Or they're noticing certain things. Like I'm getting this energy of like chickens are coming home to roost. Like they're like, I told you so, right? That's what I'm saying. Like they feel like you were being weird, you made wrong decisions, and that's just what it is. Yeah, but he would definitely get his karma, especially if his manager is what made him go against other people or kind of believe in some of his radical views. I think his Mark is hypothetically, allegedly, I think Mark is very much so a conservative. I think he absolutely believes in those things. Like Mark is the kind of person to me who is like very, we are Charlie Kirk. Like I think that he very strongly has certain opinions and views. Like this is someone who if you put him in the middle of Alabama, he'd probably fit right in. And I'm just gonna describe it like that. Like I think he has very strong views on certain kinds of dating, like on certain kinds of lifestyles. On the opinions on like what women can and should do and should be. I'm just gonna leave it kind of vague like that, but you can kind of guess what I'm saying in terms of being a conservative. I'm not saying he's necessarily a raging misogynist, but in a lot of ways he might feel like the man is ahead. Whatever a man gives you, you should kind of be grateful for, or you shouldn't necessarily hold certain things against them. I think he's definitely conservative. I'm not saying that he's necessarily like MAGA or whatever. I'm definitely not saying that. This is all hypothetical, alleged. But I do think that he's very much so conservative. I think that he plans to live his life and raise his family on those values. Like I think he's very, very Christian. I think as Christian, like I said, as some of the people in the Bible Belt, I think he would very, very much so fit in with some of those people. In terms of being anti-black, hypothetically, allegedly, I do feel like he has some of those views. I like he might have kind of a superiority complex. This reminds me a lot of Wushik. Like it's not that he's necessarily like disgusted to see black people, right? But I do think to a certain extent he honestly, damn, when I say this, he kind of gives me eugenics a little bit. Like I don't know, something about this feels very like I'm better than you because of this, or you have certain things, you have X, Y, and Z going on, so that means that you are this. Like this is the kind of person to kind of bring body types or like brain types or like what you have as like for example like Jehovah's Witnesses, they're like, oh, if you have dark skin then you're this or that. Like that's what I'm talking about eugenics. I'm not saying that he's literally like a race scientist, but it definitely feels like there's certain attributes where he kind of demonizes them out of anti-blackness, right? I think he overwhelmingly feels this way. Like I think it's very hard for him to get out of this, or if you let him talk enough, he will kind of reveal his true colors when it came to that. But no one is obviously, especially in K-pop, no one's gonna put you on the spot to have a conversation in depth about your views on race. That just doesn't happen over there. I just feel like he feels that way, even if he hides it, even if he's just like, I'm able to be calm about it. Like I just think at some point he would not be able to kind of mask those feelings. But they feel very, very strong to me. Like, how sometimes people talk about like white men and how, for example, they'll date a girl and they'll be like, have you been with any black men? Because they start to feel a certain kind of way because she's been with a black man, and with like just an obsession with like the black male sexuality. I don't know if that's a talking point that he's specifically into, like talking about penises and stuff like that. Like, some people get really, really weird. That's what I'm talking about, like race science and like eugenics. Like, it definitely seems like there's discussion about certain features or certain things that would get like quite strange. All hypothetical, alleged. I just feel like he wouldn't deal with anti-blackness. Not that anti-blackness is normal, but I don't think he would be able to deal with it normally at all. With his shirt controversy, hypothetically, allegedly, I feel like he meant that shit. I feel like he knew exactly what he was doing wearing that shirt. I'll tell you that much. I don't think he thought it would be that much of a backlash. I also feel like Mark has gone away with a couple of things where people haven't disliked it, but it's never kind of meant issuing an apology. I think that he was very annoyed about having to put that out. He feels, like I said, he feels like he might not have been held accountable or suffered for this in the past, and now he is. Like, what the fuck? Like, I think that's why the apology came off so dry, because I think he was actually very, very annoyed that he had to do it, or felt like it's not a non-issue. Y'all will get over it. Like it was essentially like, shut up about it. Like, you guys are focusing on something that I'm not even focusing on. Also, to a certain extent, I do think that Mark thought he was above it. Like, I do think he thought that it wasn't necessarily going to affect. I don't think he thought it was going to impact what he had or what he could make. This might even be a thing of like, y'all are saying all this, I'm still a millionaire. I still have, a bunch of money in the bank and stuff like that. Like, in his mind, he was just like, I don't like, no matter what you guys say, I'm not actually going to deal with real consequences of this, and I promise you that. But like I said, I do feel like there is a woman somewhere who's really just like, Mark, nothing is gonna happen. These black people complain about stuff. Like, they complain about this all the time, right? But like I said, I like his intuition in the midst of all this is just gnawing at the back of his head. He's just like, oh, I don't know about it. Like, I'm like, he's like, maybe I should say something, and they're like, just give a vague statement. You don't even have to acknowledge what you did. You don't have to don't assume blame. Don't do all this and that. But he knows that he's doing things that are alienating to people. He has people around him. He has yes men who are just like, you're not gonna have to pay for that. It's not gonna come back around to you. And then it does. And he's like, y'all told me that I was gonna be perfectly okay. Where the fuck is perfectly okay now? I do think that he feels like he wishes he could go back and never do it, especially if and when he fails, hypothetically, allegedly. I think that he feels like it can all be tied back to that one specific moment because it was such a big scandal, and he really handled it so lackadaisy as if he had just, like, I don't even, like, he had flicked somebody off, and it's like, no, baby, it was a lot worse than that. But he definitely did that shit on purpose. It's just like, if he could have, hindsight is 2020. If he could go back, if he would understand now or at the time when he wants to release some things, if he would understand at that time what that scandal might have done to him, he would have handled it completely differently. He honestly would have never wore the shirt. It's going to be a lot of retroactive regret because in the moment he was just like, fuck it, I'm still rich. No one around me really cares. I'm gonna be fine. Yeah, and he feels like that's something that he's never going to really be able to live down because the apology was some dog shit. And you cannot blame a random SM stylist this time. It's really just you and your Confederate shirt. Like, congratulations, you're a fucking clown. It's very interesting though because in a weird way, I'm not saying that. I hope this isn't not delusional, and I personally don't give a fuck about this. But there's a part of me that feels like Mark might like to date interracially, hypothetically, allegedly. Like, Mark might not be someone who struggles to find people who don't look like him attractive, but I do feel like, and that's not unheard of racist either, where it's like, you might have a black girlfriend, but you're saying all this crazy shit. Like, I feel like he's not someone who would not be attracted to black women or want to indulge in those ways. And I do think that like I said, he might have some personal interactions where he starts to feel like, or like, some intuitive impulses where he's like, oh, I think something's gonna be, like, something really bad is happening. And so I don't know if this, like, I hope it's not my motherfucking video, bitch, but he might have some serious some interactions with black women or black people where he's like, my street kid is fucked up, even though I don't feel that way about them, or like, my hatred is not all encompassing. I might hate certain things but not necessarily everything. These people are not banging with me, like, they're not fucking with me. Like, he knows that he was selfish. He doesn't understand. He thinks that it's gonna be all love when he drops. A lot of people are like that. Y'all hate me today. If a good song comes out tomorrow, y'all will love me, and that is the reality for a lot of people. But I just don't think it's gonna be in his case. Yeah, he's gonna think he's a king. He's gonna think he's a king, and he's gonna realize a lot of this is over. Like, a lot of this is over. This is not even me wishing bad on him necessarily. It's just like, he's gonna realize there are a lot of people who just don't fuck with him like that. It's not even, this over hatred. It's just like, we're not buying that shit. Like, we're not. I do think he had an okay birthday. I just feel like after Leo season, he could definitely feel things get spooky. Like, things are not as good as they used to be. He starts to feel it, and like I said, it could begin with certain things in relationships or trying to date that go sour, where he's like, wow, the public perception of me is quite bad. Because